There'll be winners and losers, barn burners and snoozers this week in the SEC.
Well, friends, the long-awaited 2016 season is upon us, and it's going to be a good one. So let's get this show on the road. Tennessee versus Appalachian State. Anticipation is high in Knoxville as those musket-wielding Mountaineers take the wagon train west for a showdown at Neyland Stadium. But it won't take long for Appalachian State to discover that Big Orange firepower is just too hot to handle. In a snoozer, Tennessee. South Carolina at Vanderbilt. Elsewhere in the Volunteer State, Will Muschamp will be wearing his third school color combination in just as many years, proving that he changes his wardrobe as often as the Travago guy. Lucky for Will, his Gamecocks open with a win, but only because they're playing Vandy. In a barn burner, South Carolina. Louisiana Tech at Arkansas. Seeing as how his offseason was filled with bacon-wrapped chicken wings and other high-calorie indulgences, it's only fitting that Brett Bielema starts 2016 with a cupcake. In a snoozer, Arkansas. Alabama versus Southern Cal. Nick Saban takes his herd of prideful pachyderms to Texas for a showdown with USC. But if you think this is going to be a close one, then you've had more 80-proof liquor than Steve Sarkisian at a Boosters dinner. In a snoozer, Alabama. Clemson at Auburn. It's put up or shut up time for Gus Malzahn, whose seat is hotter than Clay Aiken watching the director's cut of Magic Mike. And here's more bad news, Gus. It's only going to get hotter after those other Tigers come to town. In a barn burner, Clemson. Georgia versus North Carolina. Most call this one the kickoff classic, but we're going to call it the Kirby Derby when Coach Smart unleashes his stable of running backs to run wild on the boys in blue. It's a new era in Georgia football, and it starts with catching North Carolina on their heels. In a snoozer, Georgia. Southern Miss at Kentucky. The Golden Eagles from down south begin their season with a trip to the Bluegrass, and it shouldn't take long for them to lay a butt-whooping on the homestanding Wildcats. And after all that hissing and scratching, at least there'll be plenty of bourbon for UK fans to drown their sorrows. In a snoozer, Southern Miss. UMass at Florida. UMass enters the season roundly predicted to be the worst team in college football, so it ought to be a field day in the swamp. As long as those Gators don't come trotting off the field with the green apple splatters, surely that won't happen again. In a snoozer, Florida. LSU versus Wisconsin. Fans are paying record-high ticket prices for this neutral site matchup at LAMBEAU Field. It's just too bad those Wisconsin Badgers aren't anything like Honey Badgers, because maybe then they'd have a fighting chance. In a snoozer, LSU. South Alabama at Mississippi State. Dan Mullen may have lost his star quarterback, but lucky for him, he returns just about everyone else on both sides of the ball, and he'll be happier than the Butcher's Bulldog after starting 2016 with a win. In a snoozer, Mississippi State. Missouri at West Virginia. Barry Odom begins his Missouri career by taking his Tigers to West Virginia for a good old-fashioned fist fight against those wild and wonderful Mountaineers. This one's going to be a slugfest, and there's a good chance somebody comes away missing some teeth. In a barn burner, West Virginia. UCLA at Texas A&M. Kevin Sumlin has an advantage on the defensive line, but with the way UCLA throws it around, his secondary is going to be busier than a one-eyed cat watching two rat holes. My gut says they shut him down, and my liver is just glad it doesn't belong to Johnny Manziel. In a barn burner, Texas A&M. Ole Miss versus Florida State. For our final matchup of the week, we go to Orlando to see if Hugh Freeze can weather what is arguably the toughest schedule in the NCAA. And if they can hold Dalvin Cook to anything less than 200 yards, he'll be off to a good start. In a barn burner, Ole Miss. Yes, friends, in many parts of the country, they'd call that a mighty handsome group of games on the gridiron. But here in the Southeastern Conference, we just call it Week 1.
From way down in Florida, up in Kentucky, Texas to Tennessee, there'll be winners and losers, barn burners and snoozers this week in the SEC.